This is Danny Belts, and we're having conversations about faith and identity. And I'm here with Reverend Jill from St. John's Episcopal Church. Thank you so much for joining us today.
So nice to meet you, Danny.
So Jill was willing to come in and talk to us about the LGBTQ and religion. And there's a huge gap in our society, and there's been for years and years and years. And a quick story of mine is, I grew up Roman Catholic. I went to CCD, and I always felt spiritual. But I always felt like I was in the wrong body.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time. I was angry at God because I didn't understand why I was born this way. And then I grew up with friends that were very religious, made me feel like I needed to pray it away, or like there was demons and, I didn't find the right person and this and that. And being spiritual, I kept trying to like undo this, thinking that was my journey. Yeah. And I'm very lucky that my parents are very supportive. But having that religious trauma, I realized my body was embedded with shame and guilt. And it was bringing inflammation and disease in my body, and I was getting sick.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time now to really realize and unlearn these, conditional thoughts that, I'm worthy and I'm good enough as I am. Yeah. And I want to be a testament to kids that are scared, or anybody scared to walk in the church out of fear of not being accepted.
Yes.
Because I know of friends where it's kind of like whisper down the lane, like what church is accepting, right?
Yep.
And to hear it from a pastor themselves, I think could really start to bridge this gap.
Yeah.
And I am now watching videos, like I'm seeing on social media, of people that were LGBTQ and now they're not because of their religion. They walked the backwards way. And if that's their journey, but I just want to speak to you about, your thoughts on, the queer community and how it relates to God's beliefs.
Thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation with you.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to be here. So if you could just tell me a little bit about your past pastoral experience in your church. Like, I'm not completely familiar with like all the denominations and Episcopalian. If you could just tell me a little bit.
So the Episcopal Church is a more progressive Protestant church. We're very liturgically similar to the Catholic Church. So communion is a Sunday worship focus for us. But we're much more progressive in that we ordain clergy of all genders and all sexualities, and whether you're married or divorced, which I am both. So that's sort of where we fall on the spectrum. And we have been a church that has been journeying over the last about 50 years toward full open inclusion with our LGBTQ brothers and sisters and siblings.
It's really special, and we need this more than ever right now.
Yeah.
So really, really powerful stuff. So a couple questions I have for you is, in your experience, what does it look like when someone is truly seen and loved by God?
I think it's the most life-affirming thing possible when somebody truly feels that they are seen for who they are in their fullness. Both the struggles that we have for those to be known and held by a loving God, as well as the triumphs. I think a lot of times, Sunday morning church looks very shiny and happy and uniform, and life as human beings is rarely that, right?
Absolutely.
It's usually just a beautiful holy mess.
Yep.
And for a church community to sort of lift that up and accept that and highlight that, wherever you are on your journey in your life, and to know God more fully. So, I have parishioners who are middle-aged women going through divorce, and they know I've been through a divorce, and so they feel like they're being heard and seen for that. with LGBTQ, I think it's for our parishioners here, for them to know whether it's a parishioner whose sibling is LGBTQ and can be a godparent in just who they are,
Yeah.
that who they are can represent God to our baptized child, or our our married LGBTQ couples who bring their children here to be baptized, for them to know that they're just going to be fully loved and accepted and honored for who they are in the life of this community, is powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Having conversations with you now is opening up something new for me to get back into possibly a church, because I am a very spiritual person. I practice on my own, I pray at night. But these conversations have not been had. So, and just for an LGBTQ person or someone that feels different to just wake up and go to church without feeling less than, just feeling good enough and confident to walk into this church and baptize their child, knowing God loves them unconditionally, is incredible.
Yes.
As it should be. Right?
As it should be. I mean, that's just, it is remarkable, and yet it shouldn't be.
Yep. Right? Yep. So we're making steps. So what has been one of the most eye-opening conversations you've had around sexuality or gender identity?
Personally, I have a lot of conversations with my non-binary child, who has really helped me grow as a person. I always thought of myself as very liberal and progressive, but as in many things, some of my ideas are still rooted in the past, and I needed to be expanded. I think anytime that we move away from topics of conversation because they are difficult or make us feel uncomfortable, it means that we are not growing and evolving as people. Absolutely. Which is really what God wants for us to all. So I've had those conversations just on my own, which has been so wonderful, because then it helps me see how to begin broaching different topics with my parishioners who may be struggling with some of the shifting gender norms.
Absolutely.
And many of my parishioners, the high majority, 90%, are fully supportive of gay marriage, but then they struggle around the gender identity questions.
Yes.
So having those kinds of conversations has been both difficult and very rewarding with my church. Not everybody's there. It's a conversation.
It takes a lot.
It takes a lot.
For sure. I think that's such a blessing that you have a non-binary child, and I'm sure you've provided such a safe space for them to feel good enough from their higher power. So I commend you for that, and I'm sure they've taught you so much, and it's a learning experience.
It is.
And the biggest act of love is willing to break free of the conditioning, right? And just by acting on love and just letting them know that they're good enough is,
God created this, each one of us to be these amazing human beings, and sometimes it takes us a while to live into that and find out who we are.
Definitely.
And hopefully we never stop doing that. Mm-hmm. Right. And then once we feel grounded in who we are and held by God and honored by that, it just makes us flourish.
Absolutely.
And I really think that's what God's dream for each of us is, just to be fully known, loved, and to flourish to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is that the older generations seem to struggle with a lot of change because they've been pushed into boxes their whole life.
Right.
And now it's like, why all of a sudden is everybody coming out as this or that? That's not real. That doesn't exist. When in reality, everything in this life is fluid.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You know, nothing in life is black and white.
No.
There's so much gray and so many colors, right?
Absolutely.
And really the biblical story is all about God's people trying to live into this like diverse, gorgeous creation that God has made, not always understanding it, trying to put our human control boxes back into it, and then God breaking it open again and saying, you know, there's so much more in life.
Absolutely.
And so many more ways to experience God.
It's really true. I have a couple other questions for you, and then I could just chat with you forever about all this stuff. Let's see. How can religious communities create more open, honest spaces for these conversations?
You know, I mean, first, it really just begins with trust. I think that, you know, a congregation comes and they really need to feel that it's a safe place for them. Both, you know, both those who are LGBTQ and those who are on the other side of the spectrum, to feel that they can ask questions and be heard, hopefully with an, you know, open ears and open heart. Absolutely. So that we can move into these, you know, it's these kinds of conversations are all about being vulnerable, and being vulnerable makes us afraid. Yeah. And what we tend to do is then lash out or be protective. And if you can create a space of trust and love, then it allows people to be more elastic. Absolutely. As they're absorbing new ideas. Yep. and interactions. And, you know, one of the other things that's kind of unique in society right now that faith communities offer, we are not a society where people of differing opinions tend to come together anymore. And people of different generations tend to interact a lot, right? And church still tends to be one of these few truly multi-generational spaces. And I think that that's so important because we can only grow together if we're really having a chance to get to know each other. And so, you know, that's one of the things that at St. John's that I find really wonderful is that now churches tend to be on the older end anyway, but we do have a nice community of folks in their 20s and 30s who are raising children and coming here with questions or who are, you know, a married lesbian couple raising their child, or you know, we've had you know, gay members on our governing board, and that they can be lifted up in leadership and then seen and respected, and then you're just having a cup of coffee with somebody. Yep. And then I've always found that our stereotypes tend to be the biggest barrier that we have to actually true relationship with people. Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. And so once you can get to know somebody, not as a label, transgender, but as Danny, then you're like, well, okay, I know somebody who's like that. They are wonderful and loving and funny and smart and creative. And so then it shifts you along that continuum. Yes. And so, yes. So I'm starting something called Unbox Living, where, you know, I'm in school to be a counselor right now. I want to help people regardless of what they're going through. And also a life coach for people struggling with, you know, I've had chronic pain and just identity issues, but labels are very limiting.
So I was insecure in my first couple of years of my transition. I'm 4 years in now, but I remember I was just like angry when people misgendered me or this and that. And it's like I needed people to know I was queer so women felt safe with me. But now it's like I don't feel the need to tell people because I want to just be a human and people love me for who I am. And then maybe down the line they find out, right?
Right.
But
right.
now I am telling people because I'm using my voice because I want to break free of that label. Sure, on paper I'm transgender, but really I'm a fluid being. We all have female, masculine hormones, all in us. And I know there's a lot of queer people that are also very angry, and they do point fingers too, right? And rightfully so. They've been, oppressed their whole life, but there's on both sides there's egos and there's finger pointing, right? So to be able to open the conversations to both sides, because the media shows only the far left and the far right.
They sure do. They like those outliers,
right? But to have these vulnerable conversations is what breaks these walls down and bridges these gaps.
Absolutely.
And so having these spaces is so important to do so.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to come to your services. And
Danny, it will be wonderful to welcome you.
Yeah, I will absolutely be here to check it out. And I think that, God's journey for you is to do what you're doing as you are. And mine is to have gone through what I've gone through, to know that we are all imperfectly perfect, and to share our story to help others not have this religious trauma. Nobody should have religious trauma.
Nobody should have this religious trauma.
Right?
No. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you for still being open to God at work in you and through you. This will be a gift to so many queer kids, for them to know that they can bring their whole self, their physical self and their spiritual self, and to be held and nurtured and loved. It's beautiful. I'm so grateful that you're doing this work.
Thank you. And that was the journey that I was given, is that I had a dark, teenage years, just a lot of anger, shame, guilt, confusion, but there was always a little light inside of me. And I know that was my higher power saying, you're going to get there. You're going to get to the light. And I'm finally here. And I'm a walking testament that anybody can get here. So it's just, it takes, you have to go through the dark to get there, though. And some people think that there is no light, or it's never going to change, but it is. It's just understanding that everybody's going to have their own opinions on you, and that's their problem.
I started as an ordained person when my church had been ordaining women for about 20 years, but not everybody was accepting of women's leadership. And so I know some of what it is to stay in a space and say, I'm here, I'm called, I should be here, and I have something to offer. And I'm so glad that you're doing the same kind of work in your own way. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I would love to do something with you and be a part of a service and volunteer in any way that I can. So
that would be great.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation today.
Thank you, Danny, so much.